Today we're going to talk about the different size clutch drivers and the two different style clutch hubs that Midwest Super Cub sells, and the clutch driver stud and the nut. First off, we'll go with the clutch drivers. This here is for our 3-puck clutch. There's 3 pucks inside. It fits this. It's about roughly a 6-inch diameter clutch driver, and the disc will be 6-inch diameter. This is for our 4-puck clutch. It's about a 1/2 inch bigger. It's about a 6.5 inch diameter. And this is for our 5-puck clutch. It's about a 7-inch diameter. So you can easily identify them. You don't know which driver you got just by measuring the diameter. 7 inches for the 5-puck, the 6.5 is for the 4-puck, and the 6 inches for the 3-puck. And then we have, when you install these things, you want to take and put that driver stud, when you get it, it comes up, the studs are not put in, you got to put them in yourself. Just take and screw this in here like this. Works really good to put a drill on here and spin them with the drill. It goes really fast. It speeds up the operation immensely. And that's how I always put them in, just with the drill. I always screw them in until that's about flush with that. Put a little Loctite on it, drop Loctite on those threads before you do it, then just spin the nut on, tighten it down tight. Now if you have a deal where you got a weird setup and the clutch disc is way out, you can always take and screw this out a little bit like that. And if you have a deal where you have a setup where it's way far away or something else, you can actually put the nut on this side if you want to. It'll actually work on this side too and jam it down. But we typically recommend to put it on this side. The only time you want to put the nut on that side, if you have a deal where you have a stock flywheel on a stock K-series Kohler where you got the cast iron cooling fin, that nut will hit. So in that case, you just put the nut on this side. You'll have plenty of room yet to make it all work when you're done. And the other thing is too, maybe on a Kohler Command, you run the plastic fan on it yet, and the flywheel may hit, so you might want to switch around that way too. But typically, you run a steel flywheel, we put the nut on this side, just jam it down, put a drop of Loctite on it too, so it'll come loose. Shouldn't have any trouble with that ever coming loose. I'll take this back out of here. And we sell these individually, replace these driver studs. If you have a driver stud that's really wearing bad here, right where the disc wears, that means you have a misalignment in your clutch, or your pillow block bearing is not in the right spot where the clutch is really wanting to walk in there along really hard on it. You'll wear those pins. So if you have worn pins, check your engine to clutch alignment, or make sure your pillow block bearing is right up against that backside of that spring where it should be. Don't put it back close to transmission. It needs to be right behind the spring. Do that, and then the next thing is too, these things here, with the bearing on the bearing side like this, that goes in the clutch hub here. These are made about a 2/1000 press fit from this. This is like an inch 502. This is an inch and a half right here. So it's made to press fit it in there because you don't want that thing to walk. That's what keeps this thing centered. So what I do, when you have the clutch hub on the motor, you get that started lined up, put the bolts in, and slowly draw the bolts evenly, back and forth, and draw it in there tight. And then when you go to take it off, you might take a hammer and tap on this on one side and knock it loose. But keep that, it'll be a tight fit, and that's what keeps that thing perfectly aligned. And all the sizes are the same way. Remember, the bearing always goes toward the clutch hub. And then on these clutch hubs, this here's the K-series clutch hub. And the question comes up once in a while too. If you have a Magnum style engine that has a bolt with a washer on it, we have a washer we sell that lines this up, because this is made for the threaded end coming out, the 5/8. If you run a steel crank, you'll need to take a drill and drill this out to 3/4 inch hole, because steel cranks have a 3/4 inch hub in it. And the other thing too, if the flywheel that's drilled for the 4 bolts, these are 3/8 bolts on a 3-inch circle. And if they're drilled for that, you can either use the 4 bolts to drive the clutch hub, or you can use the dowel pin. You don't use both because they don't necessarily line up exactly. Sometimes the hole's off a little bit, so you can't use both, either or. Like a cast iron flywheel, stock flywheel, you probably use the dowel pin. And then if you have a steel flywheel, I always just use the 4 bolts. And it takes a 3/8 by 3/8 16 socket cap screw, about 2 1/4 inches long would probably catch it. And I always use the 1-inch long grade 8 bolts, quarter 20s on here, with a washer, a flat washer and a lock washer hold the driver onto the clutch hub. And this here is a Kohler Command clutch hub. Really similar to this one, except it's got a bigger hole in the middle. And these holes are for the 8mm bolts on a stock flywheel. They're metric. The steel flywheels we put 5/16 in, which is about the same size. 8mm and 5/16 are really close to the same size diametrically. This here is the shoulder that flywheel rides on. There's a flywheel that's got a step on it. The steel flywheel and stock flywheel is the same. It rides on and centers it up there. That goes against the flywheel. Put your 4 bolts in. Again, it takes the same length bolt as the ones before, but there'll be like an 8mm coarse threaded bolt or a 5/16 fine if you use a steel file from us. And it bolts right on. Everything else is the same. And that's the 1.5" hole where the clutch driver will go, or the clutch driver will go right in that thing just like before. Same operation there. And if you have a flywheel where you run a situation like maybe some Magnums are like that, they have the raised center in there yet like that, but they have the 3/8 bolt holes, and that's the case, just take and drill these holes out to 3/8 and use a little bigger drill bit to give you room for the bolt to go in there. And that's how you do that part of it to make it all work together.